with Alan Juddy, and this is another episode of Seed Dating, the podcast where you get to meet one of Agricom's forage products, learn about its attributes, and match it to your farm system. And here to nurture this new blossoming relationship is our very own forage relationship expert, Alistair Moorhead. Hi, Al. Who are we going to meet today?
Really excited about this one. We're going to meet Mohaka because you get more tucker.
With Mohaka?
Oh, that's a good one, Juddy.
Well, Al, tell me about Mohaka. What is it?
Well, Mohaka is a tetraploid hybrid ryegrass, Lolium hybridum. And this is a type of ryegrass that is a cross or naturalized or stable cross somewhere between Lolium multiflorum or annual and Italian ryegrass or biennial ryegrass and perennial ryegrass, Lolium perenne, which is a long-lived temperate grass. So it's a bit of a continuum. What is a hybridum or what is a hybrid ryegrass? And it is a very interesting category because in a world where you're trying to create rotations that meet people's expectations between cropping cycles or pasture longevity, more winter growth or more autumn growth, which these hybrids typically try to have, you just need to always understand where you sit in that category, and it's quite an interesting process trying to work out what they are.
So you can have hybrids that are towards the more perennial end and others that are towards the more Italian or annual end.
Absolutely.
And then some that are actually in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle. And I suppose the issue you always have is what's the value of a hybrid when it just looks like a perennial, and what's the value of a hybrid when it just looks like an Italian. And if it does the similar sort of jobs, what is its value? And I feel that's part of the backstory to Mohaka.
So what is the backstory to Mohaka? Where did you see it? Where does it come from?
Well, the backstory really starts with our long history with hybrid ryegrass back into the 90s with Agricom, where Greenstone was Agricom's first tetraploid hybrid ryegrass. And it was at the longer end of that spectrum, closer to the perennial ryegrass in type. What we identified as we were going into the 2000s, that the winter activity and the difference between a hybrid ryegrass and a perennial ryegrass needed to be more obvious. And so more and more winter growth sort of needed to come. And to be fair, we probably got a little bit lost in our business for a period of time about what is the traits that we value in a hybrid ryegrass. And Mohaka represents the first re-engagement with probably creating a tetraploid hybrid ryegrass for our portfolio in a modern farming system and a modern farming era where rotations and undersowing and these traits are no different to the past, but we are trying to get the best out of every opportunity. And I think Mohaka has stepped up right at the right time for us at Agricom.
And in terms of it coming through the breeding program, was it a real standout visually to look at?
Oh, look, I wouldn't actually describe it as that, interestingly enough, because once you start working with a hybrid, you are looking for it to be stronger than a biennial. So you're wanting it to well and truly last into its 2 to 3 and even into its 4th year. Once you get to the 4th year, how you perform in the 4th year is quite a big deal. And quite often you're still probably better to invest in a perennial ryegrass to achieve full production in a 4th year. And often hybrids are more often than not in decline in the 4th year. But what we saw with Mohaka was this consistency where it competed with very strong types. It was visual beside and around strong early styles. So actually straight Italian ryegrasses with AR37 endophyte, other hybrids from other businesses that were valuing quite upright and winter active styles. Mohaka was competing, not necessarily beating, but competing with those types very strongly in the first 6 to 8 months. And then once you go through your first summer, you start to define how strong these hybrids are. And really part of that is that how vegetative you are through the summer defines a little bit of how much perenniality you've got in. So the more vegetative you are, the less seedy you are in summer, sort of highlights how much perennial genetics you've got in your background. and then how you perform in your autumn, your second winter, and then back into another summer, back into another winter. How do you repeat, rinse and repeat, basically, when it comes to hybrid ryegrass? And so Mohaka really just continued to grow. Its performance got better and better through the years. And when I say that, in multi-year trials, competitive in the first year, but actually getting really strong in the second and third. Yeah, and we started to see regional and differences. And what we have found is that as you get into tougher summer conditions, it has performed even at a higher level as well and more consistently. So that's probably why it started to stand out.
So specifically talking about Mohaka, the key attributes. Give us a list of those key attributes that you'd be that Mohaka brings to a forage system, and probably let's start off with the insect protection. In terms of endophytes, where are we there with Mohaka?
Mohaka comes with two endophytes, a Janthratrum endophyte, AR37 endophyte, and an AR1 endophyte. And that is a pyramine and an animal safe endophyte, which is really useful because Mohaka fits into a lot of systems, which we'll just mention very shortly, and it benefits from having the options of the two endophyte styles. What we're seeing with Mohaka is that for a tetraploid hybrid, its tolerance to the insect pests Argentine stem weevil is really significant. And this is a big deal because, as we've discussed in previous Alan Juddy Show podcasts, is that the Argentine stem weevil in New Zealand is a really significant pasture pest that has become a bigger problem than it has been in recent years. And tetraploid hybrid ryegrasses, because they are exposed to multiple summer conditions, are actually quite vulnerable to stem weevil. And if your endophyte is not, completely supporting the resilience for that time, they can be taken out by stem weevil quite regularly. Mohaka has shown some really strong resilience, both with the AR37 endophyte in the north of New Zealand and the AR1 endophyte in the rest of the country, which is really powerful for Argentine stem weevil tolerance.
And I guess given that you haven't got insects creating a whole lot of damage there, then probably for a tetraploid hybrid, its ability to be quite resilient under grazing is also elevated because of that.
Well, that was the trait really that stood out to me. Is I had a couple of options at the time. Another line came through parallel to it, and it was a little bit too open. And one of the things I value is genuinely having density, not necessarily excessive density, which we do have a few of those styles of grasses that have really strong density in our portfolios. But Mohaka had a lot of density, relatively speaking. And I sort of look to that as just valuing grazing resilience, because I really can't run around and support every individual with the way they handle a grass in wet weather or the way they handle a grass in summertime. It's your businesses, people that are putting this grass into their farm system. It needs to be able to tolerate what you do to it in any one day. And I feel with Mohaka in our experience, that is actually what it's reflected as well, is that it seems to be extremely tolerant to a range of behaviors, a range of grazing managements, locations, and probably be the highlight of it is that it's just been so stable and functional on such a wide range of landscapes, environments, dry, wet. It's been delivering really well.
And so when we're trying to fit this into a farm system, let's think about those characteristics and how they might best play out in a farm system. Let's have some examples of where you'd be using Mohaka into a system.
Oh, well, straight away with the AR37 endophyte, the undersowing into existing dairy pasture that's been damaged by pugging in the winter and early spring, or damaged through summer conditions where you're trying to keep the perennial base of the pasture and you just want to get momentum for an autumn calving or a very early winter calving date that we have in the top of New Zealand and parts of Australia. You want to get fast grass, but you also want to complement the existing perennial pasture. You want to thicken it up so it doesn't get weeds coming in and cost you lots of money and spray programs to keep them out. Mohaka fits very, very nicely. And with AR37, it really adds resilience to an existing perennial pasture. And on good rotation lengths, Mohaka ends up being a very, very good grazing grass that maintains summer quality doesn't go to seed like an Italian, can be managed really, really well in a lactation pasture. When you move out of that system into a more purposeful pasture that would be dominated by Mohaka, using Mohaka 37 in a beef system with relish red clover, choice chicory, ecotane, creating pasture mixes that have those sort of strong 2, 3, maybe even 4-year type of species, particularly relish red clover, and possibly ecotane in that scenario, you are getting nice diverse pastures that are lasting under beef management, young dry stock with dairy. And then the AR1 pasture option with Mohaka provides a really much safer pasture for lamb finishing with relish red clover, attribute white clover. Those sort of mixes go really, really well, provide a lot of horsepower, because then you can flow them into a beef system as well. So use lambs at certain times of the year, use beef animals through the winter, for example, is a really nice combination. And then likewise for the deer industry, where you're trying to get winter growth to put weaner deer on and unleash weaners in the spring when their appetite increases in early spring, and then you're bringing stags into it to try and improve their nutritional profile, to elevate their velveting potential. Mohaka and relish red clover are like built for that job. They're just designed for the hard wearing nature, with the hooves of deer tend to cut up pasture in wet conditions, but the nutritional profile of a tetraploid hybrid ryegrass chock-a-block full of relish red clover is just built for that sort of system.
Yeah, I guess something you mentioned earlier about the job of these hybrids really is to fit into a modern farming system, which is about rotations and making sure that your grass kind of fits the rotation of some of these other species. And I guess the way I look at this is actually it looks like Mohaka is not a perennial and it's not an Italian, but it's kind of both, all kind of packaged up into one grass.
That's right. And especially when you recognize that you are not a truly perennial landscape, because you need to find a place to dig up to bring your winter crop in, or you need to dig up a paddock to put a summer crop in. And so these other feed systems are super valuable on your farm. And so often you are spinning a little bit faster than maybe 6, 8, 10 years that some people may expect rotations to last. So it's not like large scale sheep and beef operations. It's like the finishing areas within a sheep and beef landscape. So you're looking to establish a really powerhouse finishing pasture in between cropping systems where you might want a 3 to 4 year break.
Ding. Well, that sound obviously signals the end of this speed date. So just to summarize, Mohaka, it's not a perennial and it's not Italian, but it's kind of both. I like that description of it as a plant resilient, a resilient hybrid, particularly under some stressful situations, good end-of-fight protection depending on whether you're using the AR37 or the AR1 in those different situations, and great where you're looking for those shorter-term options, but you really want the powerhouse that comes from that Italian drive. Well, today I'm identifying as a deer farmer who's looking for a grass to finish weaners and then maybe bring some stags on, like you suggested, Alistair. So Mohaka is certainly at the front of my mind to put into pasture mixes. So if you want to grow more tucker with Mohaka, swipe right and head to Agricom's website for more information. You've been listening to a podcast of Seed Dating with Al and Juddy, and we look forward to catching you again soon.